Hi, and welcome to Reed's Audio Reading. I'm Reed, and I hope you enjoy my channel. Today I'll be reading the Accessory Guide to Hell, specifically Chapter 5. This accessory was written by Chris Pramas. Chapter 5 Personalities. This chapter details the most important personalities in Hell, including prominent members of the Bazetsu nobility. The bulk of the chapter is given over to the Lords of the Nine and the Dark Lord of Nessus himself, Asmodeus. Lords of the Nine. The Lords of the Nine are devils of incredible power. While many gods have a domain to rule, each lord has an entire layer of hell under his or her command. Despite this power and prestige, the lords are not gods. At least, the lords of the first 8 layers are not. Asmodeus is a special case. He is dealt with at the end of this chapter. For the purpose of the following discussion, the lords refer to the lords of the first 8 layers. The nature of the lords is a topic of continued discussion throughout the planes. While they are obviously not powers in the traditional sense, after all, they have no mortal followers, they seem to have near total control over entire layers of hell. Some scholars think it's only a matter of time before the lords become true powers, while others think they belong to a separate category of higher power altogether. The truth is, the lords themselves don't even know the answer to these questions. Some of them think they know, but only Asmodeus understands the true state of affairs. Asmodeus is a Dark Lord of Nessus, but few understand what the status really means. Since he can control the 9 layers, he usually and mistakenly lumped together with other lords, and is assumed to have powers similar to those of his cohorts. In fact, the lords derive their power from Asmodeus. He chooses who will rule each layer, and invests each of the rulers with some of his essence. This allows them to control and manipulate their home layers. It also has a tendency to convince the lords that they are more important than they really are. What Asmodeus gives, he can also take away. As his treatment of Gairon proves, see below. He can take away a lordship at any time and for any reason. The Reckoning. The politics of current day were shaped by an event known as the Reckoning of Hell, or sometimes just the Reckoning. This event was the accumulation of thousands of years of politicking and backstabbing that recast the landscape of Hell into its current form. In the early days of Hell, the lords were much more blatant in their precaution of their internence warfare. Armies crossed from layer to layer with alarming regularity, allowing the Tenari to rack up some impressive victories in the Blood War. 2 main power blocks existed among the lords. Leading one faction was Mephistopheles, allied with Despater, Mammon, and Grayon. Opposing them was Beelzebul's faction, which included Moloch, Belial, and Zariel. Both Beelzebub and Mephistopheles believed that he needed to eliminate the other to gain enough power to challenge Asmodeus himself. With 4 lords lined up on each side, Asmodeus seemed to stand alone. The reckoning started on Avernus. Zariel had prepared an enormous army supposedly to lead against the Tanari in the Blood War. At the last minute, she led this army into Dis instead and laid siege to the city itself. Exactly on cue, Moloch and Belial led armies into Stygia. These attacks took Mephistopheles by surprise, and the war went badly for his faction at first. Stubborn defense and a willingness to lose millions of devils to buy time allowed Mephistopheles to prepare a counterstroke. When all was ready, Mephistopheles led his Agelagon legions into Maladomini, while Mammon took his forces to relieve Dis. Zariel retreated to the first layer, while Baalzebul called for reinforcements to help him hold off the rampaging Gelagons. The tide had turned. At this point, the focus of the conflict shifted to Maladomini. The other offensives were abandoned, and each side poured troops into the 7th layer. Despite the horrendous casualties that had been suffered by both sides, the opposing armies were each millions strong. On a fateful day, the armies of Mephistopheles, Despater, Mammon, and Grayon faced off against those of Beelzebul, Moloch, Belial, and Zariel. As the pit fiends whipped the troops into battle frenzy, the leaders were already thinking about disposing Asmodeus and crowning a new king of hell. Asmodeus, however, had other plans. Unbeknownst to the other lords, Grayon had secretly remained loyal to Asmodeus. Grayon, with the help of the Dark Lord of Nessus, had infiltrated the ranks of both armies. As the two mammoths' forces were about to clash, Grayon blew his mighty horn. On his signal, the pit fiend generals of all armies turned on their masters, showing their ultimate loyalty to Asmodeus. All of the warring lords were overthrown by their own troops, and Asmodeus was the undisputed victor of the day. Asmodeus proved yet again that he was impossible to second guess when he reinstated most of the rebel lords nearly immediately. Those who had expected advancement over the heads of their fallen lords were disappointed, but the Dark Lord had his reasons for keeping all the lords in power. To his mind, he had taught them a lesson they would not forget, and he'd rather have enemies he knew about than those he did not. All of the rebellious lords were given their domains back, with the exception of Moloch, who had apparently offended Asmodeus in some other way. In a completely bewildering move, Gairon, the only lord who had remained loyal, was deposed and replaced with Prince Levistus. Asmodeus always has his reasons, but his throwing down of Gairon had yet to be explained. Asmodeus did, however, reward the pit fiend generals who had shown their loyalty to him. To show them favor and take substantial power away from the lords, Asmodeus created the Dark Eight and gave them command over the Bazetsu armies of the Blood War. While each of the lords retains a personal army, the enormous legions of earlier days are a thing of the past. The Dark Eight are completely loyal to Asmodeus, ensuring him domain over the vast majority of the Bazetsu race. Personality statistics. The unique devils described in this chapter use a condensed form of a standard monstrous manual statistical presentation. In general, devils can be found on the specified layer of hell. Their frequency is very rare, they are organized into courts, they are active all the time, and their diet is something best not to contemplate. For treasure types, use type H for the Lord's palace or castle and type Z for the Lord's person. Lesser nobles and pit fiends use types G and W. All Bazetsu, including the nobles, share certain powers and invulnerabilities. These are given at the start of the appendix. Unless otherwise noted, spell-like abilities are cast at the 20th level of effect. Bel, the Pit Fiend. Warlord of Avernus, Lord of the First. Bel is perhaps the greatest success story of Hell. He climbed the ranks of devilkind until becoming a pit fiend. He then orchestrated the assassination of a pit fiend general and took over the position himself. As a general for the Dark Eight, Bel proved an exceptional warlord and a master of deception. In his most noted campaign, he seemingly betrayed Asmodeus and joined the Tanari. After convincing the Tanari of his loyalty, he led them into a long prepared ambush that decimated the demonic armies. He then returned to Hell covered with glory, his star in the ascent. As a reward, Bel was given command of all the armies of Avernus and became the right hand of Zariel, the original lord of Avernus. Bel served Zariel faithfully for many centuries, concentrating his efforts on the blood war as was proper. In time, Zariel came to trust her underling, and this was her undoing. In the most dramatic coup in history of Hell, Bel turned Zariel's court against her and then overthrew the forlorn lord. By a means that has yet to be determined, but perhaps learned during this time among the Tanari, Bel was able to imprison Zariel and render her powerless. He then declared himself Lord of Avernus and prepared to repel the assaults that he was sure would follow. Much of Bel's surprise, no ravening hordes swept into Avernus. Instead, Asmodeus sent Martinet, his constable, to meet with Bel. Martinet first congratulated Bel on his coup, praising his guile and his capacity for long-term planning. He then informed Bel that Asmodeus had decided not to make him burn in the pit of flame for all eternity. Rather, Asmodeus would support Bel as lord, but only if he continued to fulfill his obligations to the Dark Eight. Bel, delighted that his treachery had found favor with the Dark Lord of Nessus, agreed to the terms immediately. Bel soon learned why Asmodeus had chosen to support him. Although he was now a lord, Bel still had to lead the armies of the Dark Eight. The time spent attending to the blood war prevented him from concentrating his efforts on the politics of nobility. Furthermore, the older lords gave little respect to the pit fiend they considered an upstart. Among the Bazetsu nobility, he was often referred as Bel the Pretender. In a stroke, Asmodeus had replaced a quarrelsome and conniving lord with a harried pit fiend with little support among the nobility. Despite the difficulty of his position, Bel tries to do justice to both his positions. He has been slowly sucking the power out of the imprisoned Azariel, and this has helped him consolidate his power on Avernus. He has made overtures to both Beelzebul and Mephistopheles, but neither trusts Bel due to his proven treachery. Bel's current policy is to support Asmodeus in the hope of further advancement. To the end, he has inserted spies into the courts of other lords and funnels information through Martinet to Asmodeus. While most of the information garnered isn't news to the Dark Lord, the effort has carried some favor with him. Bel, the Pit Fiend. Bel's favored weapon is a jagged edged sword that emanates the fire of hell. This weapon is +3, +5 versus Tanari, and inflicts double damage on cold using or cold dwelling creatures. The Tanari know and fear Bel's blade, and thousands have fallen to it in the course of the Blood War. Once per round, Bel can use the following spell like powers in addition to those normally available to the Bazetsu: Detect Magic, Detect Invisibility, Fireball, Hold Person, Improved Invisibility, Polymorph Self, Produce Flame, Pyrotechnics, and Wall of Fire. Additionally, anyone of good alignment who is less than 10th level must save versus spell when encountering Bel or suffer the effects of a fear spell. Those of neutral or evil alignment suffer the effects of awe instead. Archduke Despater of Dis, Lord of the Second. Despater is perhaps the most conservative of the lords of hell. He has made a career of hedging his bets and never taking big risks. He almost never leaves the Iron Tower, inside which he is invulnerable. Only the call of Asmodeus can bring him out, and whenever he is ordered to leave his citadel, he returns as soon as possible. Despater prides himself on his ability to control his emotions. Even when anger is burning inside him, he remains outwardly calm and in control. This self control and his excellent manners has given him a gentlemanly veneer that aids him in politics. Beneath his velvet glove, however, is a fist of iron, as many members of his court have found out to their cost. Despater is one of the oldest devils, and he would not have kept his lordship this long if he were a weakling. In the politics of hell, Despater is an ally of Mephistopheles, at least in name. Despater supports the Lord of the Eight because Mephistopheles is a true member of the Bazetsu race. Beelzebul, their enemy, is a fallen archon and as such deserving of no respect. Only a devil as old as Despater would remember or care about such details, but his memory is long and he does not forget. Since the reckoning, however, Despater has been very careful about his political stances. He knows that he was lucky to retain his lordship, and he would require considerable persuasion to defy Asmodeus again. Despater. Despater's badge of office is a 3-foot long rod made of iron and lead, said to have been enchanted at the same time as the Iron Tower. This rod is a weapon of +3 enchantment that inflicts 4d6 damage per strike. Additionally, it acts as a rod of ruleship. Once per round, Despater can use the following spell-like powers in addition to those normally available to Bazetsu: Beguile, as per a rod of beguiling; Detect Invisibility; Gaze; Light; Polymorph Self; Produce Flame; Pyrotechnics; Raise Dead; Read Languages; Read Magic; Restoration; and Wall of Fire. Once per day, Despater can create a symbol of pain, utter an unholy word, and fulfill a wish. 3 times per day, he can summon 1d3 Araignées or 1 Pit Fiend with a 90% chance of success. Despater's greatest defense is the Iron Tower. While within its walls, he is invulnerable. Weapons pass right through him, and spells fizzle when they touch him. He is only vulnerable to attack while away from the tower, so he only travels when necessary. Viscount Mammon of Minoris, Lord of the Third. Mammon is a devil who knows what he wants, and that's power. He rules over the stinking mire of Minoros, but spends most of his time plotting and scheming. Despite his lordship over it, he cares little for the third layer. Some say that the city of Minoros is sinking because Mammon is unwilling to expand the power necessary to save it. Even if that slur is untrue, it is clear that Mammon only has eyes for what he might gain in the future. He enjoys the thrill of the hunt, but is indifferent to his prey once the hunt has ended. Mammon does what's good for Mammon. When it served his purpose, he allied with Dispater and Mephistopheles during the reckoning. In the wake of that disaster, Mammon was the first to abase himself in front of Asmodeus and begged to be allowed to serve him once again. Courtiers have witnessed Mammon's antics in Malchim, have described his behavior as shameless and embarrassing. Nonetheless, Mammon was allowed to retain lordship over the third layer, although he was forbidden to continue his relationship with Princess Glacia. He has obeyed Asmodeus in this, though he once again plots with his old cronies Dysphater and Mephistopheles. In the distant past, Mammon had a form not unlike that of a pit fiend. After the reckoning, Mammon changed forms, possibly to prove that Asmodeus that he had become a new devil. He now appears as an enormous snake with a human torso and head. This is suspiciously akin to Grayon's form, but after his deposition as Lord of the Fifth, Gurion could say little about it. When he feels frustrated or just wants to blow off steam, Mammon reverts to his former form, mounts a nightmare, and leads a pack of hellhounds on a brutal hunt across Minoros. His most frequent targets are those devils who desert the army, but several adventuring parties have had the bad luck to run into Mammon when he was in a bad mood. None have survived. Mammon. Mammon's enormous serpentine form makes him a dangerous adversary. He wields a long spear with a barbed head, a weapon of +4 enchantment with which he can make 2 attacks per round. In addition, he can make a tail attack. Those hit by this attack take 2d6 plus 10 points of constriction damage per round until they break free, requiring a strength check at a -10 penalty. Every other round, Mammon can make a special bite attack. Those bitten take 1d10 points of damage and must save versus poison or contract a wasting disease. Victims of the disease lose 1 hit point per hour until a heal spell is received. Lesser magic has no effect. For each day that passes before being healed, the victim loses 2 points of charisma. Once per round, Mammon can use the following spell-like powers at 20th level of effect, in addition to those normally available to Bazetsu. Beguile has the effect of Rod of Beguiling. Detect Invisibility, Detect Magic, Dispel Magic, Fool's Gold, Geese. Invisibility, Morph Self. Produce Flame, Pyrotechnics, Raise Dead, Read Language, Read Magic, and Wall of Fire. Once per day, Mammon can create symbol of hopelessness, utter the unholy word, and fulfill a wish. 3 times per day, he can summon a 1d3 Bazetsu, 1d3 Hamatula, or 1d3 Osiloth, with an 80% chance of success. When Mammon reverts to his former appearance and goes out on a hunt, he loses his bite and tail attacks, but gains an extra attack every other round with his spear. He usually takes 2d12 hellhounds on such hunts, as well as a nightmare mount. Lady Firana of Phlegethos, Lord of the Fourth. Lady Firana is the daughter of Belial and the core ruler of Phlegethos. After the reckoning, Belial thought it was best to retreat somewhat from the spotlight. With Asmodeus' approval, he elevated his daughter, and the two have ruled together ever since. It seems that Firana is nothing but Belal's mouthpiece. According to the rumors current among the Bazetsu nobility, Lady Firana takes little hand in the governance of her lands. Supposedly, she spends her time bathing in pools of magma while letting her pit fiend general, Gazra, perform her duties. As is common in Hell, this is a lie perpetrated by Firana herself. Like her father, she is a cunning politician. She has found that these rumors lead other devils to underestimate her, and this has proved her useful time and again. While she does indeed spend much of her time in pools of magma, she does so in the company of her father, and the two use this time to discuss politics and stratagems. Fiorana has a deserved reputation for volatility. When frustrated, she gets angry, and when angry, she takes vengeance. Bloody, fiery vengeance. Balal is adept at focusing his daughter's rage. Although the denizens see Fiorana's outbursts as random and out of proportion, the opposite is usually true. The sight of Fiorana's burning body is usually enough to send any devil packing. Lady Fiorana. Lady Fiorana has mastered the element of fire. She can create fire at will, and can cast any fire-related spell at 20th level of ability, in addition to her normal Bazitsu spell-like abilities. In combat, a blade of pure flame springs from her palm. This weapon does 2d8 plus 10 damage and has a plus 4 enchantment. Additionally, 3 times per day she can summon 1d4 Sprinagons, 1d3 Hamatula, or 1 Cornagon with an 85% chance of success. Strangely enough, Farana is also immune to cold and ice damage of all kinds, both magical and mundane. This has led some to speculate that she is seeking mastery of a second element and perhaps looking to take over Stygia or Cania. Great Belal of Phlegethos, Lord of the Fourth. Belal is an old schemer whose good looks and glib tongue continue to serve him well in the machinations of hell. An ally of Beelzebul's during the reckoning, Belal kept his position by agreeing to share power with his daughter. He works closely with Farana, and the two of them have proved a formidable team. In many ways, the reckoning turned out in Belal's favor. He was the sworn enemy of both Moloch and Gairon, both who lost their lordships in the aftermath. Belal imagined that he and his daughter would quickly be able to conquer Stygia and then perhaps Malagard. He was most disappointed when Prince Levistus was given lordship of Stygia, because Levistus was a devil of old school and a worthy opponent. Bilal and Farana sent one army to Stygia under the command of the pit fiend Gazra, but the army was decimated in the churning ice flows of the Dark Sea. Since then, Bilal has concentrated on outmaneuvering Levistus politically. Bilal has learned it's best to remain in the shadows and let his daughter wear the mantle of leadership in public. Many devils consider him a power in decline and wait for the day when Farana dispatches him and seizes total control. They do not realize that his power has only increased since his alliance with his daughter, and that the two are bound tightly together by blood and politics. Bilal. Bilal rarely engages in combat, preferring to use his minions instead. When necessary, he wields a military fork plus 4 that inflicts 1d12 plus 11 points of damage. Those struck by the fork must also save versus spell or suffer the effects of a symbol of pain. Once per round, Belal can use the following spell-like powers in addition to those normally available to Bazitsu. Begal, detect invisibility. Geese, light. Polymorph self, produce flame. Pyrotechnics, raise dead. Read languages, read magic, restoration, and wall of fire. 3 times per day he can create symbol of pain. Once per day, Belal can utter an unholy word and fulfill a wish. 3 times per day he can summon 1d4 Sprinagons, 1d3 Hamatulas, or 1 Cornagon, with an 85% chance of success. Prince Levistus of Stygia, Lord of the Fifth. Levistus has a long history in hell. Some experts say that he is even older than Dispater, a claim hotly contested by supporters of the Lord of the Second. What is known is that in the distant past, Levistus crossed Asmodeus. Rumor has it that Levistus tried to overthrow the Dark Lord of Nessus. In fact, his crime was far more heinous. Levistus ambushed Lady Bensozia, the consort of Asmodeus and the mother of Glesia. While she traveled through Stygia, he slew her guards and then tried to turn her against the Dark Lord. When Benzozia rebuffed the young prince, he grew angry and slew her. Asmodeus, outraged by his insolence, imprisoned Levistus inside an iceberg and swore that he would never release the traitorous noble. Millennia passed, and Levistus remained encased in ice. However, outside events were to work in his favor. In a turnabout that baffles historians of hell to this day, Asmodeus disposed Geryon, the one lord who remained loyal to him in the reckoning. Geryon had replaced Levistus and had served Asmodeus well, so his disgrace was a mystery. For reasons of his own, Asmodeus awoke the frozen Levistus and offered him his lordship back. However, the Dark Lord of Nessus did not release Levistus from the ice, ensuring that the prince would largely have to work through others and sharply limiting his power. Despite his perpetual imprisonment, Prince Levistus has been busy. He has entrusted the Amenzu of Stygia with many important tasks, making them believe they are outside the bounds of the Bazitsu hierarchy. The Amenzu routinely subvert and defy the leaders of the Blood War, all the while attempting to advance Levistus's agenda. The prince has every intention of conquering an adjacent layer of hell, in the probably mistaken belief that access to so much power would allow him to break free. In the pursuance of this goal, he has succeeded in alienating all the other lords. Each and every one of them despises Levistus, and some very unlikely alliances have cropped up to quash his plans. Nonetheless, Prince Levistus believes that it's only a matter of time before he breaks free from his prison and takes his vengeance on the other lords. Levistus. While encased in ice, he cannot move or make physical attacks. Should he ever break free, Prince Levistus would be able to use his favorite weapons, a rapier +4 and a main gauche +3. In addition to giving him an extra attack, the main gauche automatically cancels one attack per round from a melee opponent of the prince's choice. Levistus can choose to forego his weapon attacks to make a special touch attack that mimics the effects of the river Styx. Those hit must save versus spell or suffer complete amnesia. Those who save still lose 1 year's worth of memories. Once per round, Prince Levistus can use the following spell-like powers in addition to those normally available to Bazitsu: Beguile, Detect Invisibility, Ice Storm, Gaze, Light, Polymorph Self, Raise Dead, Read Languages, Read Magic, Restoration, and Wall of Ice. Once per day, Bilal can utter an unholy word and create a symbol of pain. 3 times per day, he can summon 1d4 Abishai, 1d3 Erenyes, or 1 Aminzu with an 85% chance of success. Meligard, Hag Countess of Malbolge, Lord of the Sixth. Formerly ruled by Moloch, who was cast down by Asmodeus, Malbolge is one of the most inhospitable layers of hell. The current lord is Meligard, the Hag Countess. She was a prominent member of Moloch's court, and some say his lover as well. In the time leading up the reckoning, she encouraged Moloch to join Beelzebul's alliance. When both Mephistopheles and Asmodeus were out of the way, she whispered to Moloch then he could dethrone Beelzebul and become the king of hell. Moloch needed little encouragement to come into the war, and he prosecuted his attacks with gusto. Unbeknownst to him, Maligard was in secret communication with Geryon, and she arranged for Moloch's armies to betray him at the climax of the war. While the other lords fled in the face of Asmodeus, Moloch stood his ground. Maligard told him that Asmodeus would respect his strength if he remained defiant, and Moloch all but spit in the face of the Dark Lord of Nessus. For this impudence in the face of utter defeat, Asmodeus cast down Moloch and replaced him with Maligard. The Hag Countess kicked her former lover out of Malbolge, and he has not been seen since. Since then, Maligard has ruled the crushing lands from the hidden fortress said to be inside a perpetual rolling boulder. Unlike other lords, she does not hold court as such. Her nobles are scattered throughout the lair in copper fortresses, and she visits them periodically. She usually appears in disguise, so the fortress commanders must always be on their best behavior. More than one disrespectful noble has found himself staring at the wrong end of Maligard's flaming sword. For the most part, Maligard stays out of Bazitsu politics. She witnessed the strength of Asmodeus once, and she knows better than to mess with him. While Beelzebul and Mephistopheles continue to bicker, she has bent her will towards a different goal, achieving godhood. Maligard knows that the lords are not true powers, and she is trying to find the means of her ascension. She has made several trips to the astral plane to investigate the bodies of the dead gods that float there, but so far she had no success in determining what the essence of godhood is. Maligard. Although Maligard appears as a withered old hag, she can move with alarming speed and agility. She wields a flaming sword that is light as a feather in her hand. This is a weapon of +4 enchantment that inflicts 1d12 +14 damage per strike. She has absolute control over the physical aspects of her realm and is nearly invulnerable while in Malbolge. She can cast Meteor Swarm once per round in addition to her other attacks. While in Malbolge, she can start avalanches at will, often directly under the feet of her enemies. 3 times per day, she can summon 1d4 Sprinagons, 1d3 Barbazu, or 1 Gelugon with an 85% chance of success. Archduke Balzabul of Maladomini, Lord of the Seventh, aka Triel the Fallen, the Slug Archduke. Balzabul used to be a favorite of Asmodeus. A former archon of Mount Celestia, Balzabul was thrown down from those lofty heights because of his selflessness and his relentless pursuit of perfection. Asmodeus, all too familiar with the long fall into Bator, took the battered ex-archon and made him a Bazetsu noble. In short order, Balzabul mastered the art of the infernal politics and overthrew the previous Lord of the Seventh, whose name and deeds are now forgotten. It was at this time Balzabub earned his sobriquet, the Lord of the Flies. By the time he took over the seventh lair, his net of intrigue was said to be woven so tightly that even a fly could not escape his clutches. Balzabul's greatest flaw has always been not knowing when to stop. His need for complete perfection in all his endeavors drives him to acts of extremity. His crowning folly is without a doubt the reckoning. Had he contented himself with striving to defeat Mephistopheles, Balzabul may well have succeeded. However, his desire to overthrow Asmodeus colored his decision making and offended the Dark Lord. While Asmodeus had no problem with the idea of one lord controlling 2 lairs, he would not countenance a lord with an eye on his throne. After the defeat of the rebellious lords, Balzabul was offered his position back by the Dark Lord. However, Asmodeus destroyed the handsome features of the vain rebel, making him assume a horrid slug-like form. Now known as the Slug Archduke, Balzabul dreams of taking his vengeance on the Dark Lord who humiliated him. He must deal with practical matters as well, most notably his continuing struggle with Mephistopheles. Both he and the Lord of the Eight believe that the key of reversing the reckoning is to defeat the other, so skirmishes and outright battles are common between the armies of the 2 lords. Balzabul, or Triel the Fallen, as he is sometimes known, takes out his frustrations on his hapless subjects. As mentioned in Chapter 4, Balzabul builds city after city for himself in Maladomini, but none of them are ever good enough. He can see his perfect city in his mind, but cannot make a reality. The same can be said of his political aspirations. Balzabul. Balzabul cannot wield weapons in his slug form, so he must attack with his stunted arms. These inflict 1d10 plus 7 damage and have the same aging and withering effects as a staff of withering. Ageless creatures such as devils and demons are not affected by these special abilities. Once per round, Balzabul can use the following spell-like powers in addition to those normally available to Bazetsu: Beguile, detect invisibility; Geese, light; Polymorph self, produce flame; Pyrotechnics, raise dead; read languages, read magic; restoration; rulership, as per a rod of rulership; and wall of fire. Once per day, Balzabul can create a symbol of pain or insanity, utter an unholy word, and fulfill a wish. His gaze causes fear. 3 times per day, he can summon 1d4 Aranyes, 1d3 Barbazu, or 1 Konugon with a 90% chance of success. Archduke Mephistopheles of Cania, Lord of the Eight, aka Molekroth. Mephistopheles is a lord of frigid Cania. His Gelagons guard the entrance to Nessus, the domain of the Dark Lord. Despite this prestigious position, Mephistopheles has always been jealous of the other lords. His greatest expression of this jealousy was, of course, the reckoning, but Mephistopheles demonstrates this attitude anew every day. Although no one would ever dare to say so to his face, Mephistopheles is much like his archdevil Balzabul. Like the Lord of the Flies, the Lord of the Eight cannot seem to get enough power or prestige. When Asmodeus rewards a noble for valuable service, Mephistopheles wants to know where his reward is. As other devils around him are promoted, he cannot believe that he is still only a lord of hell. Martinet of the court of Asmodeus is said to have remarked that were Mephistopheles to become king of hell, it would take him less than an hour to start wondering why he wasn't also ruler of Mount Celestia. It is no surprise, then, that the court of Mephistopheles is a dangerous place. The nobles who serve him must do justice to their positions without shining too brightly. Those who rise too far too fast are considered to be a threat by Mephistopheles, and he quickly arranges their downfall. Although this policy has kept the Lord of the Eight in power for as long as anyone can remember, it has also robbed him of his abelest nobles. As a consequence, both his political and military schemes have suffered, and his conflict with Beelzebul continues to stalemate. Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles likes to play up his diabolical image. In addition to his classic wings, claws, and horns appearance, he favors a military fork +3. Each of these weapons, 3 tins, can cause 3d4 points of extra damage on a melee hit from fire, cold, and electricity respectively, save versus spell applicable. Only one power can be used per hit, and each type can only be used 3 times a day. Once per round, Mephistopheles can use the following spells like powers in addition to those normally available to Bazetsu: Beguile, Detect Invisibility, Geese, Ice Storm, Light, Polymorph Self, Produce Flame, Pyrotechnics, Raise Dead, Read Languages, Read Magic, Restoration, and Wall of Ice. Once per day, Mephistopheles can utter an unholy word and fulfill a wish. His gaze causes fear. 3 times per day, he can summon 1d3 Gulagons with a 90% chance of success. The Bazetsu Nobility. Pit fiends are widely thought to be the masters of the Bazetsu race, the glass ceiling of the infernal hierarchy. While the lords are known at least by rumor, their immediate underlings are not. The Bazetsu nobility is a class of devils ranking between pit fiends and lords. They serve in the courts of the lords and spend most of their time politicking within and amongst the court. Although they are not familiar to mortals, the nobles are an important part of hell. Those who have studied the Bazetsu race have seen how a lemur can rise through the ranks, changing through other forms to ultimately become a pit fiend. All throughout the hierarchy of hell, the form of different Bazetsu is standard, as law dictates. When a pit fiend is chosen by a lord to ascend to the nobility, however, the devil is allowed to be an individual for the first time. Each diabolical noble has a unique form. Those features, such as wings and claws, are common. These different forms are the surest way to identify a member of the nobility, though the fact that each of them can polymorph adds some confusion to the issue. The courts of the lords are full of barons, counts, dukes, princes, and holders of other noble titles. Each lord rates these ranks differently, so judging the relative importance of a noble can be quite difficult. Like most devils, the nobles are interested in getting ahead. They thus make excellent mid level villains. Each noble is a unique and powerful adversary with his or her own agenda and the resources of hell. DMs fearful of using the lords as enemies are encouraged to design a noble or two instead. Below are some example nobles. These can be used as the basis for creating new nobles or incorporated into a game in the form given here. Martinet, Constable of Asmodeus. Martinet is the Constable of Asmodeus. His job is to clean up the frequent political messes of hell. His influence has stopped several wars from breaking out among the lords, and his diplomacy has ended even more conflicts. Martinet has an extremely level head, and he never flies off the handle. He has withstood the tirades of Beelzebul and Mephistopheles without so much as raising an eyebrow. While most of the lords think that he is a tiresome meddler, they cannot ignore his office without offending the devil who stands behind the constable, Asmodeus. Martinet. Martinet rarely engages in combat. When pressed, he uses his ornate staff as a weapon of +3 enchantment. Those struck by the staff must save versus paralyzation or be immobilized for 2d4 rounds. Once per round, Martinet can use the following spell-like powers in addition to those normally available to Bazitsu: detect invisibility, detect scrying, geese, light, polymorph self, read languages, read magic, whispering wind, and wizard eye. Once per day, Martinet can cast Feeble Mind and fulfill a limited wish. He can summon one Sprinagon every round and use these summoned devils as messengers. Princess Glacia, the Dark Prodigy. Princess Glacia is the daughter of Asmodeus and Bensozia. The circumstances of her conception and birth are mysterious, and Asmodeus is not known to have any other children. In her early days, Glacia was something of a rebel. She flighted from court to court and had a torrid affair with Mammon. After the reckoning, Asmodeus stepped in and ended their relationship with Mammon by force. With cleaning house in the hierarchy of hell, Asmodeus thought it be best to take care of his own affairs as well. He reigned in Glacia and informed her in no uncertain terms that she would have to take on some responsibility if she wanted to retain the prestige of her position. Glacia threw a fit, but she knew she had no choice. Asmodeus put the Inries under her command, and she has since worked closely with the Dark Eight in that capacity. Princess Glacia has found that she enjoys her duties as leader of the Arenies. Like the devils under her command, Glacia can visit the prime material plane without being summoned. She keeps a close eye on the Arenies, often spying on them while polymorphed to make sure they are doing their jobs. She is not immune to the charms of the Prime. She has seduced her share of mortals over the years. She particularly enjoys taking her prey back to hell and then informing them of their doom. Glacia. Glacia prefers to avoid combat, and she usually teleports away from any dangerous encounter. When pressed, she wields a sword +3 of virulent poison. This blade does 1d8 +6 damage in Glacia's hand and combines the properties of a dagger of venom and sword of quickness. Once per round, Princess Glacia can use the following spell-like powers in addition to those normally available to Bazitsu: Beguile, Charm Monster, Detect Invisibility, Dispel Magic, Gaze, Light, Polymorph Self, Produce Flame, Pyrotechnics, Raise Dead, Read Languages, Read Magic, Restoration, and Wall of Fire. Once per day, Princess Glacia can employ a Finger of Death and fulfill a limited wish. She can also cause fear by speaking to an individual and is well known for her vivid descriptions of the torments that await those who cross her. 3 times per day, she can summon 1d4 Arenius or a pit fiend with a 75% chance of success. Glacia regenerates 2 hit points per round, even when she seems to be slain. This is a legacy of her father, and she may be closer to true godhood than any of the lords. The Dark Eight. The Dark Eight are the pit fiend generals that run the blood war of Asmodeus. They are considered the leaders of the Bazitsu race and report directly to the Dark Lord of Nessus. They have little interaction with the lords of the first 8 layers, although they do compete with them for recruits. Nearly all of their times is taken up prosecuting the blood war, and they descend to Malshim to conference with Asmodeus 4 times a year. Historians of Hell have marveled at the stability of the Dark Eight. Although their founder, Cantrum, was slain ages ago, the remaining members of the Dark Eight have remained the same as long as anyone can remember. The fact that the Dark Eight seem to have no more power than the typical pit fiend has only heightened the curiosity of the situation. Surely, in all these years, at least one of the Dark Eight should have fallen to an assassin's blade. In fact, many members of the Dark Eight have been assassinated, and only Balziphon and Phorcas remain from the original group. When one of the Dark Eight dies, the other members act quickly and discreetly to replace him. An underling of the slain leader is promoted and takes on his former master's name. In this way, continuing in leadership is maintained, and no panic sweeps through the infernal army. Any devil suspected of knowing the truth is slain. While this has led to the loss of some talented support staffers, the security thus gained is considered worth the price. Each member of the Dark Eight controls an aspect of the Blood War. Their names of responsibilities are Phorcus, mortal relations; Balzephon, supply; Zimimar, morale; Zephon, immortal relations; Zebos, promotions and demotions; Korin, espionage; Dagos, strategy; and Pirza, research and implementation. The members are pit fiends with maximum hit points. See the Monstrous Manual tome for details of the pit fiend's abilities. Those looking for more information on the Dark Eight and the Blood War are encouraged to seek out the copy of Hellbound, the Blood War box set from the Planescape line. The powers of Hell. Since Bator is the home of lawful evil in the Outer Planes, most of the deities of that alignment have their domains in Hell. They occupy a strange middle ground in the politics of the pit, neither part of the hierarchy of Hell nor opposed to it. Space does not permit a full treatment of the gods who call Hell home, but some generalities can be made. The gods of lawful evil, such Bargivek and Druaga, have their domains in Hell. These domains are under the gods' complete control, and neither Asmodeus nor the other lords have influence there. The spirits of the followers of those gods show up in the appropriate realm as petitioners. There, they take on whatever forms the gods decree. Thus, petitioners in Drakari, Kortulmak's realm, are reborn as kobolds, while those in Ankugat's set realm may be given the forms of crocodiles or jackals. For the most part, these powers don't get involved in the politics of Hell. They have enough trouble dealing with other members of their pantheon. They do not need armies of devils invading their realms. Some of the gods, such as Set, make minor deals with this lord or that, but most prefer to stay out of the politics. Several pit fiend generals have advocated poaching petitioners from the realms of these gods, but Zephon of the Dark Eight has strictly forbidden it. The Dark Eight don't want a war in Hell any more than the gods do. Asmodeus. The story of Arimon and Jarian is true, at least as far as Asmodeus is concerned. After the fall, Arimon reinvented himself as Lord of Bator. As he watched from the pit, the planes populated themselves with gods, monsters, and mortals. Since few beings survived from the early days of creation, the true identity of Arimon and Jazirian remained unknown. Arimon confused matters further by changing his name to Asmodeus and posing as a near power at best, although he clearly operated by a different set of rules. Asmodeus aroused little suspicion. He was Lord of Evil, that was clear, but his powers and agenda remained obscure. In truth, Asmodeus is a great power, just like Jazirion. However, the twin serpents predate the rule of belief in the planes. They neither gain power from the adoration of mortals nor lose it from the lack of worship. They have no priest and can grant no spells. This only helps Asmodeus convince his enemies that he is not a real power. Meanwhile, he toils on the lowest layer of hell, weaving a web of lies that stretches back to the beginning of time. A being of incredible intelligence and evil, Asmodeus has been advancing a plan hatched long ago. The outer planes face annihilation, but no whisper of the threat has escaped from the pit. Asmodeus is often referred as the Lord of Lies, and for good reason. Still, he remains a power of law. His plan, simmering slowly in the depths of hell, has three parts: obeying the law of threes and serving the cause of evil simultaneously. The three prongs of his plan are the blood war, the politics of nobility, and Armageddon. The Blood War. The Blood War has been raging on the lower planes since the dawn of time. An endless battle between the devils of hell and the demons of the abyss, also known as the Tanari. The Blood War continues to dominate the politics of the lower planes. Contrary to informed opinion, Asmodeus did not actually start the war. Devils and demons clashed while exploring the plains, leading to raids of retribution, skirmishes on the bordering plains, and then full scale warfare. A conflict of chaos and law, the Blood War has consumed a huge amount of resources and snuffed out millions of fiends over its course. Asmodeus realized very quickly that the Blood War itself was utterly pointless. While onlookers ascribed vast importance to the struggle, casting it as the battle to change the face of evil, Asmodeus barely noticed the Abyssal Lords and their minions. They were an annoyance, and nothing more than that. Although militarily fruitless, the Blood War provided an excellent opportunity to distract the enemies of Hell. It did, after all, give the appearance of an important enterprise. To keep the war going in perpetuity, therefore, Asmodeus created the Dark Eight, a group of pit fiend warlords to lead the armies of Hell against the Tanari. The Dark Eight come to Nessus, Asmodeus' fortress of the Nine Layer, 4 times a year. During these conferences, Asmodeus instructs his minions in how to prosecute the Blood War in the coming months. These talks are very serious in tone, and the Pit Fiends remain convinced that Asmodeus has a deep interest in the successful prosecution of the war. This keeps the Pit Fiends motivated, and the lies come easily enough to Asmodeus. For the price of a few days a year, Asmodeus keeps his armies in the field, his generals busy, and his enemies distracted. The politics of nobility. It is widely understood that devils are divided into 3 groups: least, lesser, and greater. The least Bazetsu include Nuparibos and Sprinagons, the lesser creatures such as Barbazu and Aranyes, and the greater such devils as Gulagons and Pit Fiends. The lords, if they are classified at all, are considered to be greater devils as well. Naturally, all is not as it seems. There are indeed 3 types of devils, but these differ from the popular definition. The 3 types defined above are actually subcategories of a single group, the common devils. Ruling over the common devils are the noble devils, whose greatest representatives are the lords of the first 8 layers of hell. Standing above all of devil kind and in a class by himself is Asmodeus, father of the race and a greater god in his own right. The nobles stand above the commoners in hell as on the prime material plane. The lords of the first 8 layers have courts filled with princes, dukes, counts, and other nobles who serve them. These courts are hotbeds of intrigue, as the nobles conspire against each other. The lords, in addition to protecting themselves from overambitious minions, plot among themselves. Their rivalry is fierce, and they spend most of their time fighting each other. The only attempt to unseat Asmodeus was swiftly put down, and such a coup has never been tried again. The importance of the lords in Asmodeus's scheme is threefold. First, they keep an eye on the Dark Eight and ensure that the armies keep their focus on the Blood War. Second, the lords pursue a policy in keeping with the recognized laws of the plains, providing a public face that camouflages Asmodeus's activities. Third, their existence convinces the enemies of hell that none of the lords are true powers. Armageddon. As is often retained, the planes run on belief. When a mortal dies, his or her spirit travels to the plane that matches his or her alignment. Thus, those who were lawful evil in life are reborn in hell after death. These reborn spirits are called petitioners, and their primary goal is to become one with their gods, or, alternatively, the planes of their alignment. The gods gain power from worshippers both in life and after death, and require such ordination to maintain their divine status. The lords of the first 8 layers play by these same rules. They deal with the lawful evil petitioners in hell and tempt mortals on their prime material plane into embracing evil so that their spirit come to hell upon death. The assumption of mortals and gods alike is that hell is but another cog in the machinery of the planes. This is a lie, and its perpetration is Asmodeus's greatest triumph. An oft overlooked piece of planar cosmology is that belief is required to be reborn in the afterlife. That is, a mortal must believe in something to become a petitioner. In worlds in which the power of gods is manifested through clerical spells, belief isn't hard to come by. However, there are always those who reject the divinity of the powers and the existence of an afterlife. It is thought that the spirits of these unbelievers, lacking the will to continue on, simply cease to exist when the body dies. This, too, is a misconception. Unbelief is the tool of the Lord of lies, and those who die believing in nothing are reborn on the ninth layer of hell, regardless of enlightenment. These unfortunates are the true damned of the universe. While other petitioners strive to merge with their deities, the unbelievers are consumed by Asmodeus in the depths of hell. This painful process takes centuries to complete, during which time the unbelievers maintain full awareness. They vividly experience the loss of every ounce of their true essence, as Asmodeus slowly destroys all that they were and any hope that they could be again. Such spirits are utterly eradicated and cannot be brought back to life by any spell or power. So while the rest of the powers feed on belief, the Lord of Lies lives on unbelief. His true agenda is to promote lack of faith, not to fool mortals in embracing evil. The entire machinery of hell and the blood war to the temptation of mortals to the politics of the infernal courts is nothing but a smokescreen. All of that leads to an altogether more frightening question. Why does a god need to consume the souls of the dead? The answer relates back to Asmodeus's fall into the pit. When he and Jazarian tore apart, they left much of their power dispersed among the planes. It is this raw energy that holds the outer planes together in the Great Ring. Asmodeus, weakened by this loss of power and the fall, craves a return to his former glory. Since the fall, he has been unable to leave the confines of hell. He needs the soul energy of the unbelievers, a rare commodity gathered in tickles over the course of centuries, to heal the wounds he suffered during his struggle with Jazarian. On the day his wounds cease bleeding, Asmodeus will be able to break free from the confines of hell and reclaim his power from the planes. If this event should come to pass, it could be the end of everything. Lacking the power of law to hold them together, the planes would fragment and possibly collapse. Gods and mortals would be thrown into turmoil, and the entire universe could slide back into chaos. This, in fact, is the outcome Asmodeus desires. He knows that he would survive Armageddon and could then rebuild the universe to suit himself. He regards his cooperation with Jazarian a fatal mistake, and one he would not repeat the second time around. If billions of beings must die so Asmodeus can remake the universe to his liking, so be it. This is the true threat of hell. Jazarian. Jazarian is the only one who knows the true nature of Asmodeus. She could tell the gods of law and good about the early days of the universe and the role she and Asmodeus played in its formation. She has not. She prefers to stay quietly in the background and gather information. Her children, the Kaltul, are powerful creatures imbued with Jazarian's magic. They are spread out among the planes, gathering intelligence and sending it back to Jazarian. From this information and her own efforts, Jazarian is trying to figure out what Asmodeus is up to. She has several theories at the moment, but she has not come to any definite conclusion. Like Asmodeus, Jazarian prefers to pose as something less than she is. She is known as the god of the Kaltul, and that is enough for her. Although worried about what Asmodeus might do, she hopes that there is enough law within him still to prevent him from instigating Armageddon. Should the day ever come, however, she is ready to summon all her children from all the planes to confront her former consort. She believes that laws of the universe must be upheld, not recast to suit the needs of the powerful. Strategies of unbelief. The furtherance of unbelief across the planes is Asmodeus's primary goal. The more mortals who reject the power of divinity and the existence of an afterlife, the more souls that come to Nessus to feed him. Asmodeus currently favors several strategies, detailed below. False prophets. Asmodeus has made strategic alliances with several evil powers on the lower planes, including Set and Hakate. The powers in question have agreed to supply cleric spells to select mortals in exchange for Asmodeus's help with their own affairs. Agents of Asmodeus periodically create new cults on the prime material plane. Sometimes these cults worship diabolical powers, while other times they worship fictitious powers tailored to appeal to a target demographic, for example, the disenfranchised intellectuals or peasants. The leaders of these cults are granted cleric spells by Asmodeus's allies, and the display of these powers help the cults grow. Then, when a cult is at the height of its power, the spells are suddenly denied to the cult leadership. Lacking miracles to win new converts, a cult typically goes into decline. While some former members go on to other religions, the more extreme reject religion altogether. The most successful cults, as far as Asmodeus is concerned, despair of life entirely and turn into suicide cults. The Athar. The planes are home to many factions that each has a different view of the way of the universe works. The factions have competing philosophies, and each seek converts across the planes. The Athar, also known as the Lost and the Defiers, are Asmodeus's favorite group. They believe that the powers are a bunch of frauds. In their view, the gods are powerful beings, but they are not divine. The Athar believe that everyone has the potential to become that powerful, given the right circumstances, but that might doesn't equal godliness. If this sounds perfect for Asmodeus, it is. The ironic part is that he didn't even found the Athar. They sprang up on their own, independent of hell. However, the philosophy of the Athar is so ideal for Asmodeus's purpose that he watches their activities and provides covert assistance to them when necessary. The Athar have no idea that the Lord of Lies is on their side, and Asmodeus is careful to disguise any aid he gives them. For more information about the factions in general and the Athar in particular, see the Planescape box set or the Planewalker's Handbook. Godswar. Asmodeus has seen firsthand how petty and vengeful the gods can be. He is also a legendary master of politics, whose manipulative abilities are unmatched. While mortals believe that their gods are too omnipotent to be fooled, Asmodeus knows better. He has instigated several long running feuds among the gods, and has dozens more in the works. He works slowly and subtly, insinuating ideas into the heads of the target gods over the course of centuries. His goal is to provoke these gods into fighting each other, preferably via the proxies of their followers. By graphically illustrating the smallness of the gods' squabbles, Asmodeus sows discontent among their followers. Those who reject their patron deities can be stirred into an appropriate cult or toward the Athar. Asmodeus's avatar. As noted previously, Asmodeus's serpentine body lies at the bottom of the serpent's coil. Since his true form is hundreds of miles long, he cannot interact with his servants without the use of avatars. Normally, gods use avatars to travel the prime material plane, projecting a piece of their divine essence to take care of important matters personally. Asmodeus uses the same ability to control hell. When he needs to discipline Baalzebul, he sends an avatar. When he meets with the Dark Eight in Nessus, the pet fiends are really dealing with an avatar. As a greater god, Asmodeus can maintain up to 10 avatars at once. This allows him to have a piece of himself on every layer of hell if he needs to, with one to spare. Because of his unique condition in Nessus, he can only send one avatar to the prime material plane. If he does so, he cannot maintain any other avatars at the same time. As a result, he usually operates on the prime material plane through others. Asmodeus's avatars take the form of giant humanoid of unmistakable charisma, with a reddish cast to his skin and two discrete horns jutting from his head. Asmodeus is nonetheless handsome of face and arresting of presence. His beard is always impeccably trimmed, and he wears clothes of the finest cut. His avatars all carry a ruby rod, a badge of office that inspires instant obedience from any devil. Avatar. Fighter 25, Wizard 20, Strength 24, Intelligence 25, Dex 20, Wisdom 23, Con 23, Charisma 25, MV 24, Height 20 feet tall, MR 90%, AC -7, HD 24, HP 199, #AT 3. Thaco 1. Damage 2d8 plus 13. Special attacks. The avatar of Asmodeus radiates awe up to 120 feet. Anyone seeing him must make a saving throw versus spell at -4 to be able to attack him without being attacked first. The avatar can gate in one greater or two lesser devils each round automatically. In addition to his normal spells, he can cast the following cleric spells once per day: Symbol of Pain, Symbol of Persuasion, Symbol of Hopelessness, and Unholy Word. The rod of Asmodeus is made of pure ruby and glows with an inner light. The rod can be wielded in melee combat, inflicting 2d8 plus 13 points of damage. It also acts as a rod of absorption that can absorb up to 25 spell levels per day. Finally, the rod can cast the spells Acid Blast, Cone of Cold, and Lightning Bolt at will, as if cast by a 25th level wizard. Special defenses. The avatar is immune to all spells of lower than 4th level, as well as poison, paralyzation, petrification, death magic, illusion/phantasm spells, and mind controlling abilities of all kinds. He can only be hit by weapons of +4 or better enchantment. Thank you for listening to this audiobook of Guide to Hell, 2nd edition, Chapter 5, Personalities. I hope you enjoyed and have a great day. Best regards, Reed.